How's it going, YouTube? Tyler the Semi Mechanic here, guys. Guys, I want to talk about the three fields of diesel mechanics. I want to give you guys a real brief rundown of each of the three fields. We're going to be talking about automotive, heavy equipment, and then working on trucks. I'm going to do in-depth videos of each individual field to keep the video at a reasonable amount of time. But the things we're going to talk about are, is that location of work, is it something you can start in, like as a brand new apprentice, or do you need experience? We're going to talk about the style of pay and your estimated pay amounts that you can look at. We're going to talk about where you can work, so like what companies, shop styles, stuff like that. We're going to talk about your schedule and your hours. And we're going to talk about your internal growth. If you stick with that role that you choose, what does that look like in the long term? Okay? And finally, we're going to talk about my personal opinion of each of the fields. So let's get started. Automotive, though, is a great place to get your start if you're trying to get into being a mechanic. There is plenty of entry-level positions, such as, like, for example, like Ford Quick Lane. There's a great place to grow from there. You move up from changing oil to doing like services to eventually working yourself into the main shop. And that is what I did. I didn't start with no experience. I came out of the military with multiple years of experience as a mechanic working on Blackhawks. So I had that mechanic experience, but I decided on the civilian side, I didn't want to work on aircraft anymore. So I had experience. It wasn't like I was brand new, but I was still in an apprentice role. So absolutely, if you're trying to get started, automotive is a great place to get your start, whether that's at like changing oil at an oil change place or getting a job at a dealership and working your way up through the service department. Absolutely is a fantastic way. It is pretty tough to find smaller shops that are willing to hire like apprentices. It's pretty tough for that. Usually they want people with lots of experience and stuff like that, but it is possible. There are opportunities out there. They're just not very common. Your pay type, when you start out, usually as an apprentice and all that stuff, you are paid by the hour. Usually you're paid a very low wage. I was paid $15 an hour as an apprentice. And then as you move up and you complete your apprenticeship, most of the time in automotive, I would probably have to say over 90% of locations are a flat rate style of pay. That pay style was actually why I decided to get out of automotive and move to the heavy diesel side of things, because I like hourly pay. I'm not a flat rate technician. The flat rate style of pay is not for me. However, a lot of automotive places offer a flat rate style, and then they offer a guaranteed hourly rate, which is like if you have no work that comes in the door, you're still going to get money. Or if you have a really bad week of flat rate, you're still going to get a guaranteed hourly amount of a check. But usually it is like complete poverty wages, but it's better than nothing. So that is the automotive style of pay. Your amount of pay that you're looking at is probably anywhere on the low end of around $30,000 a year when you're starting, to the high end of, I mean, truly, you can make over six figures a year if you are a great flat rate tech and you get a lot of, as they call it, gravy work, which is easy work. You can have the potential to make over six figures. I think the majority of techs probably make between about, when they're experienced, after many years of experience, anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000 a year. But it's very fluctuated, guys. You don't have a guaranteed check amount. Usually you can have weeks, for example, where you're going to come home with $500, and you're going to have weeks where you come home with thousands. So it's a very it can be very stressful for finances, and it takes a different style of budgeting. So there is potential, like with anything you do, guys. If you get good at it, you can make money at almost anything you do. So your schedule for automotive, if you work at a dealership, I can guarantee you're going to have to work Saturdays. That's almost guaranteed. If you're in main shop, you're probably only going to work like 1 or 2 Saturdays a month, and usually you fluctuate a day off in the following week, like a flex day. But if you're on like Quick Lane or any type of like a quick service style of position, I can promise you you're going to work Saturday. And if your company's open Sunday, you're probably going to work Sunday, because those are your 2 busiest days for service, for people to get their cars serviced. But Most of the time you work 5 days a week. And you work day hours. When you go to the flat rate side of things, you have usually hours you have to be there, like 8 to 4, for example, but you can work however many hours you want because you're paid flat rate. So the more money you can make, the better you can do if you want to work more. But usually by about 5 p.m., the shops are pretty much a ghost town. Moving on to heavy equipment. Heavy equipment was my second stepping stone. I worked for a Caterpillar dealer. Can you get into heavy equipment as an apprentice? Absolutely, you most certainly can. The opportunities, though, for becoming an apprentice are not as much as automotive. You usually have to have some form of experience, and then they'll bring you in as like a C-level tech, which is basically like a lube tech, in a sense, that wants to learn more, and you slowly get indoctrinated into being a mechanic. So when I left heavy equipment, I was still technically a C tech, but I was performing at a B tech rate, and I was doing work of a B tech when I left. So it all depends how fast you develop and how fast you evolve. But if you can get your start, there is potential to become an apprentice with heavy equipment. There's just not a whole lot of opportunity compared to automotive. There's obviously a lot more automotive jobs than there are heavy equipment. So now your pay type in heavy equipment is hourly. I don't think I've ever heard of anywhere that pays flat rate. I know there is some companies that offer flat rate incentive. Short story of what that is basically if you perform higher than your proficiency, you get a percentage of extra money for performing above what your job times are, basically. So if you do your jobs faster than what they tell you you should, consistently, you usually get a little bonus. It's not very common. Your work schedule is going to probably be Monday through Friday, usually like 7 to 4, 7 to 5. Some places work 4 days a week. Most work 5 days a week. You're looking at probably a minimum of 45 scheduled hours up to 50. Most places pay overtime. Some pay straight time. And some dealerships are even open Saturdays, guys. And some places expect you to work 6 days a week, 5 days the next week with no flex day. I ran into that when I was trying to get back to getting a job as a mechanic, and I was like, I'm not working that much. That's ridiculous. So there is a potential for that, but more than likely you're going to be Monday through Friday. A lot of heavy equipment shops, especially bigger companies, are like a 2-shift shop. I don't think I've ever heard of a heavy equipment shop being 24 hours a day. I'm sure they're out there though. So usually you have a day shift and then a swing shift. Usually leaves like 11 or midnight. Very, very common for that industry because there's a lot of work, guys. Now, guys, where can you work if you want to work on heavy equipment? You're going to have a lot of jobs at any type of heavy equipment dealer of all different brands. Plenty of jobs there. You can also work directly for like the construction companies that do the work. Usually, though, you have to have a fair amount of experience to get hired on with them. Usually, they want techs who are very experienced. You can even work at places like the landfill. Any places that have heavy equipment, they need mechanics. But if you are trying to get your path in as like a new tech, probably the dealership is probably going to be your best bet to get your foot in the door for heavy equipment. Now for your internal growth as a technician in heavy equipment. So like I said, when you're starting out, you're probably going to be a C tech is what is usually referred to, or tech level 3. And then you're going to move up the ladder. You're going to go to tech level 2. You're going to go to tech level 1. And then usually in heavy equipment, they have journeyman tech. And then you have branches off of that. You have guys, a lot of guys go up into field service. I love field service. That's what I do now. A lot of guys choose to stay in the shop. You can also kind of branch off and become more of like a welder. There's a lot of guys who get actually into welding. You are going to learn welding in heavy equipment, not like structural and frame, not like really important welding, but you are going to learn how to weld if you're in heavy equipment. That's where I started to learn to weld. You kind of have to learn the basics of welding because stuff breaks, and as long as you're not welding structural and all that, really it's just a matter of repairing it. You are going to learn that, I promise, but a lot of guys branch off and they actually become big time welders, and that's all they end up doing. They kind of go from being a mechanic to being a welder, and some guys, that's all they do is weld. So there is big time potential for growth outside of being a mechanic within heavy equipment. There is lots of opportunities. And like I said, field service is a big thing. Pay type, guys, when you get off into field service and you get off into welding and you get off into being a very valuable and experienced tech, like journeyman level techs and even higher, you are looking at anywhere from 40s, 50s, even upwards of $60 an hour. At some places even pay that high, but you're looking at a very high amount of pay. And a lot of heavy equipment places have basically unlimited overtime. That was the one thing about heavy equipment that I miss, is I had unlimited overtime. It was literally as much as you wanted to work, they would pay you. Like I said, I did work for a Caterpillar dealer, and it's Caterpillar, so there's no shortage of money. So that's your growth for that. Let's talk about trucks. For semis, semi-trailers, all that type of stuff. I am new to the semi field. I've been in the field of working on semis about 6 months at this point, and I love it. Within 3 months, I moved out of the shop. I advanced to tech level 1, and I have a field service truck now. So there was a lot of quick, rapid growth for me with being a mechanic, and I'm very happy with where I'm at as a working on semis. But let's talk about it. So, can you do this as entry level? Yes, you can, but usually the lack, or I should say the availability of apprentice jobs is pretty low. There is programs in place, just like heavy equipment dealers, to get techs in the door. A lot of times, like I know Love's, like Truck Stop, a lot of truck stops offer entry-level technician programs, and they have a lot of entry-level techs that work at those places. But you can get apprentice roles at dealerships. You can get roles at fleet companies. There is jobs out there. You just got to go looking for them, guys. Your pay type is hourly. They do have, some companies offer flat rate incentives and all that stuff, just like heavy equipment. They're a lot more common on the truck side of stuff, especially if you work at like dealerships. That's a lot more common, but it's hourly pay. Your pay range, guys, on semis is probably lower than most heavy equipment. Heavy equipment, if you get into field service, get up to journeyman level, and you keep growing, your pay is going to be much higher. You're going to work a lot more hours. You're probably going to have overtime, a lot of overtime. On the truck side of stuff, most companies cap out at like top level techs, like mid 30s an hour. The companies near me, a lot of them cap out at like high 20s an hour. Thankfully, my company, we cap out at mid 30s, which is nice. But your potential for going much and much higher, like over 6 figures a year, probably not going to happen unless if you go stick with heavy equipment. That is just the fact. Like we make a great wage, especially for what we do, but you're going to make more money on heavy equipment. That is a fact. Okay. Where can you work? So if you get on the truck side of stuff, you can work at dealerships, you can work for fleet companies, you can work in a truck shop at heavy equipment dealerships. A lot of heavy equipment dealerships have truck shops as well, especially Caterpillar. You can work there. You can work at small shops. Usually small truck shops are usually not too common. Usually they're all big. And you can work at like, if you want to be like a tire tech and get your foot in the door, you can literally work at a truck stop that has a maintenance shop. Schedule is probably going to be the most sporadic of any of them. Truck shops commonly are open 24 hours a day. A lot of them are open 24/7 and only closed on like major holidays. Like our shop is open 24/5, and then on the weekends we have a small day shift crew for Saturday and Sunday, so we are open 7 days a week. But during the week, we are open 24 hours a day. Some shops are open 24/7. It's especially if you're in a fleet company, like a big company, where you got thousands and thousands of trucks and they literally need repairs when they drive up, your shop's going to be open 24 hours a day. And there is so much work, guys. It is nonstop work. On the truck side of stuff, the work is nonstop, absolutely nonstop. Your primary work you're going to do is a lot of tires and a lot of servicing. especially if you work outside of a dealership. If you work for a fleet company, you're going to be doing a lot more preventative maintenance than you would if you work at like a dealership. At a dealership, you're going to still be doing servicing and preventative maintenance, but to be honest, guys, people don't take their stuff to the dealership a lot because the dealerships are too dang expensive. That is the fact. At the dealership, you're going to be doing a lot more major repairs. Preventative maintenance side of stuff, guys, really all we do is tires, services, and then we don't do a whole lot of engine rebuilding. It does happen. It does happen, especially if the dealership's booked out too far. But really, outside of like replacing injectors and clutches and basically pulling components to get repaired, the preventative maintenance side of truck repair is much more common because there's so many fleet companies out there. Like, think of every major company out there: Amazon, Walmart, Target. I could go on and on and on. Every company has semis. Well, not all of them do. You're not going to rebuild engines in-house because you have to have people who do that day in and day out. So outside of preventative maintenance, when they have serious maintenance, they send it off to people who do that every single day. There is companies, though, that do have that type of stuff, that have big engine shops and all that. Like we have one, but it's really rare because with fleet companies, when stuff goes wrong with equipment that's like catastrophic, if it's not covered under warranty and if we don't think we can fix it, you know what they do? They sell the truck. And that is fact. That is fact. It is cheaper for them to get rid of that truck and bring a new one in than it is for them to try to repair it sometimes. And that happens. Your internal growth on the semi side of things. So, guys, I started out as a truck mechanic. Guys, it's not rocket science. It's not hard. It's easy stuff. And then I've advanced into learning the trailer side of things. Usually in the truck side of stuff, you have trailer mechanics and you have truck mechanics, usually two different roles. And then you get people who kind of like learn both, but they're a master of none. That's what I'm going for. I don't want to be all truck. I don't want to be all trailer. I have to learn both. Especially since my new role as being field service. My role is a very unique role. I have a field service role where my job is I'm attached to an account, and my job is to maintain all the trucks and trailers on that account. So I do the inspections on them. I make the repairs that they need if I can, and anything I can't fix within a certain amount of time, or anything that is going to be too much work to do for the field, I just triage it and I send it to the shop. And that goes off of my superiors that tell me fix it, don't fix it, or what to do. So I have a very unique role as field service for what I do, and I absolutely love what I do. It's great. The field service, guys, on the truck side of stuff, usually most of that is all breakdown calls, like road calls for tires and stuff like that, fuel filters. The field service side of truck maintenance is really not field service. Overall, guys, that's the rundown of automotive, heavy equipment, and truck side of stuff. Like I said, I'm going to be doing an individual video on each to give you a full breakdown of everything. There's a whole lot more underneath the surface from what we just touched. But overall, guys, my personal opinion on everything here that we talked about is this. My favorite role I've worked in is truck side of stuff. I absolutely love it. I work 4 days a week. I have a field service truck, and I work with a great bunch of guys and a great line of leaders above me. Notice how I call them leaders and not bosses. There's a reason for that, okay? Heavy equipment would be my second choice of place to work. I really enjoyed heavy equipment. It's not a bad place to work. It's very, very dirty, guys. Heavy equipment is incredibly dirty, dirtier than all the other ones put together. And it is, you're going to be outside in the elements constantly, especially if you go into field service, guys. You're going to be out in sub-zero temperatures. You're going to be in the rain. You're going to be all that type of stuff. So the shop definitely has its perks, but even as a shop mechanic, guys, a lot of shops aren't big enough for all that construction equipment. You're going to be outside a lot working in the elements. That is a fact. I'll tell you from experience, I was a shop tech, and I spent more time working outside and in the field than I did in the shop. So, but that is that. Least favorite for me is automotive, guys. I decided to leave automotive, like I said, for better opportunity with heavy equipment, and that then got me to where I am now. But I didn't like the end game I knew that automotive was going to do. Automotive is a flat rate. Automotive is constantly dealing with people that own cars who can't afford to do the maintenance on them. And it's always the technician that suffers with that type of stuff. Like, for example, when you have a diagnostic problem that takes you half a day to diagnose, you only get paid 1 hour at most places. That's that flat rate. And you have to deal with the constant problems of warranties, recalls, all that type of stuff, and most of the time it pays about half of what it should. So I feel that as a automotive tech, guys, in the long run, I think you get screwed big time unless if you can really get into gravy work and you get into repetition with the same vehicles, the same problems. Basically, then it's like you're working on fleet type equipment where you have the same problems with the same equipment, so you know how to fix it very, very rapidly. But the automotive side for me, guys, I want to know part of that. I want to know part of the clientele. I want to know part of the shop environment. In automotive, guys, people don't help you. Everybody's flat rate. Anytime somebody wants to help you, they're taking their money and literally giving it away. So people don't help you in automotive. Flat rate sucks, guys. The thing I can say about automotive that I hate more than anything is flat rate and the environment. And everything else that entails is all one. It's just a fireball. You don't mind getting dirty, and you don't mind lifting heavy stuff, and you don't mind having big tools and all that type of stuff. Heavy diesel, in my opinion, is the way to go any day of the week. There is a lot more guaranteed money in it and a lot more job potential and growth. If you so choose, that's what you want to do. So anyways, guys, that's going to sum it up. If you enjoyed this video, please shoot me a like and a subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to throw them in the comment section, and stay tuned for more content. Thank you, guys.